The Economist Intelligence Unit, or the EIU, published the Worldwide Cost of Living Index of 2021 last Wednesday. The Cost of Living Index is compiled by comparing prices in US dollars for goods and services in 173 cities. The report states that on average, prices for goods and services worldwide have risen by 3.5% year on year, the highest inflation rate seen in the last 5 years. The most rapid increases in the Worldwide Cost of Living Index were for transport, with the price of a liter of petrol up by 21% on average. Last year's winner was Paris, so which country took the unpopular number 1 spot this year? The new most expensive city in the world is... It's Tel Aviv. As we can see in this chart, where the base number of 100 is the prices in New York City, the Israeli Tel Aviv overtook Paris and Singapore to reach the number 1 spot. So why is Tel Aviv the new most expensive city in the world? The first thing has to do with how the index is calculated. Since March of 2020, the dollar lost 23% of its value compared to the national currency of Israel, the shekel. Shekel. Yeah, shekel. Anyways, because this index is expressed in dollar terms, it means that automatically countries with currencies that appreciated against the dollar have higher index values, because you now have to pay 23% more dollars for the same amount of shekels. Regardless of the currencies, a lot of the inflation has to do with housing prices and rent, which is an issue that we see in almost all countries nowadays, but maybe even more in Israel. You have a lot of rich people buying up all these properties because of extremely low interest rates. By June of 2021, the average cost of a 4-room apartment in Israel was roughly $682,000, according to the Aviv Institute for Real Estate Research, and it actually can run up to $1.2 million depending on the neighborhood. In Tel Aviv, however, $1.2 million is more of a minimum you have to pay. Now, housing prices were not included in the index calculation.
Why?
Of course they should have included it in the index. It's the same as the government saying they only look at the core CPI, which excludes food and energy. It's basically saying, okay, if you don't eat food and don't use energy, if you're not a human, maybe if you're a chair, then inflation is actually 2% lower. The same now goes with housing prices in this index. If you're homeless, you should be good. Look at what this guy named Sif Toledano from northern Israel says. It's really hard to live here. You pay the rent and you pay for something small and you live like from paycheck to paycheck, so it's really hard. He added that his expenses have nearly doubled in Tel Aviv. The research of EIU says other causes of the rapid rise in inflation are caused by increases in price for transport, groceries and gasoline, which I mentioned earlier. Of course, the EIU and almost every news article in the mainstream media nowadays mainly blames supply chain bottlenecks and shortages due to COVID-19. Which is partially true, but the main problem is, as usual, with the central banks. There's always a shortage when there's too much demand. The Central Bank of Israel has interest rates near 0% since the beginning of the pandemic, but even before the pandemic, interest rates were near 0 for 6 years already. It's always pointing the finger to someone else, while you should be pointing the finger to the elephant in the room, which is the central bank's loose monetary policy. Their monetary policy has caused excess demand in bad times, when supply chains were impacted and companies were struggling to keep producing as much due to COVID and COVID regulations. So we should consume less and buy less products in times of crisis instead of artificially creating demand, which just puts too much pressure on suppliers. To end the video, I'm really curious about you guys. Are there maybe some people from Tel Aviv right now smashing their heads against the wall? Where do you guys live and in which ways do you feel that everything is becoming more expensive? Let me know in the comments. Feel free to like or subscribe and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye bye!